بسم الله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. Welcome to the first class of this Irfan al-AQAAID English course. We will, inshallah, be holding this course over 5 weeks. And just to start, I will go over our course outline and just the general structure of what the topics will be. So, if you yes, so for week 1, which is today, we're going to be covering just a general introduction to what Aqidah is, why it's important in our deen, and what it means, and the general articles of faith that we'll be covering over the 5 weeks. I'll give a brief introduction to that. And for the second half of today's session, we will, inshallah, be covering Iman Billah, or belief in Allah, inshallah. And for the second week, we will be slowly going through all the articles of faith. So next week will be belief in messengers, so Iman bil Risala, and we will also cover the difference between a Rasul and a Nabi. So messengers and prophets, what's the difference between them? What deems a Rasul? What deems a Nabi? What are the requirements and the signs of these messengers throughout history, and we will also cover a more spiritual topic on how to connect oneself with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in week 3, inshallah, we will be covering Iman bil Kutub, so belief in our heavenly books, and we will also be discussing the change in original and modern scriptures for the people of the book throughout history, and the authenticity of the Quran. And we will also be talking about ta'alluq bil Quran, belief in the Quran, and how to connect oneself to the Quran. And for week 4, inshallah, we will be talking about Iman bil Malaika, the belief in the angels, roles of the angels, the difference between angels and humans, the concept of free will, why Allah created angels, why Allah created humanity. And we will also be covering Iman bil Qadar, which is belief in destiny, believing that good and evil is both from Allah. And finally, in the last week, inshallah, we will be talking about the Day of Judgment, the signs of the Day of Judgment, Akhirah, the life in the grave, just a general cover of the end of time and Yawm ad-Din, inshallah. So that's just a general look over of what we will be doing in this course, inshallah. So when we think about Aqidah, we need to know what role it actually plays in our deen, how much of our deen it is. So the best way we can understand this is by studying the Hadith of Jibreel, in which Hazrat Umar bin Khattab narrates that the Sahaba Karam were in the presence of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day, and a man suddenly came. He was dressed in very white clothes and his hair was pitch black, and there was no trace of travel upon him, and no one recognized him. Then he sat beside the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and rested his knees, placed his palm on his thighs, and said, "Ya Muhammad, inform me about Islam." And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Islam requires that you bear witness to Allah's Messenger. You bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Allah's Messenger is the last prophet, that you perform the ritual prayer, that you pay zakat, that you fast, and that you perform pilgrimage." So these are the 5 pillars of Islam. So this is one pillar of the deen, which is Islam, which is the practical embodiment of our faith. So Islam is the practical pillar of our deen. So next is Iman, which is what we're going to be covering in this course, Iman and Aqidah. So next, the man asked the Prophet ﷺ, to the previous statement, he said, "You have told the truth," and everyone was shocked. How is this man telling the Prophet ﷺ that he has told the truth? And then he asked, "O Prophet ﷺ, inform me about Iman, or faith." And he said that faith requires that you believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the Day of Judgment, and that you believe in the decree of destiny, both good and bad. And then the man again said that you have told the truth. Again, they were shocked. How is this man telling Rasulullah that he has told the truth? And he finally asked about ihsan, which is spiritual excellence. Then the Prophet ﷺ replied that ihsan, or spiritual excellence, is that you worship Allah as if you see him, but if you do not see him, then you must know that he sees you. So this is the third pillar of the deen overall. This hadith exemplifies and teaches us what our deen is. So at the end of this encounter, when the man left, the companions and ashab asked the Prophet ﷺ, who was that man? And the Prophet ﷺ said that this was Angel Jibreel, and he came so that you could learn about your deen. So there are three main pillars, like I said: Islam, which is the practical pillar of the deen; Iman, which is our faith, our belief, which is essential to becoming a Muslim, becoming a mu'min; and Ihsan, which is spiritual excellence, to reach that highest level of Iman and becoming a mu'min. And none of these are complete without the other. You can't just be practicing Islam and not have that true belief and be a complete mu'min. And you can't just have your beliefs and not practice them and be a complete Muslim. So you need to combine all three of these pillars for our deen, for our way of life to be complete. Because deen itself means a complete way of life. So when we combine all these three, inshallah, our Iman, our Islam, our Ihsan will be complete, inshallah. So this is general overview of what the deen is split into, so we know what Iman is. So we'll be focusing on Iman in this course. So what is Aqidah? What is the difference between Iman? What's the difference between Iman and Aqidah? So when you look at the literal meaning, Iman itself means to utter faith in Allah and His Messenger and all that's been sent to us from Him, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His Messenger, with the tongue, and believe it deeply in our hearts. When we do that, we are in the initial stage of it, which is called Iman. When that Iman strengthens and matures, that becomes Aqidah. Aqidah literally comes from the word Aqad, Ain Qaf Dal, which means to tie a knot. So something so tight that you can't untie it. When your Iman becomes stronger, it becomes like a knot. Then that is when it reaches the level of Aqidah. It literally, Aqidah, it means to, like I said, tie a knot, but within this context of Iman and Aqidah, it's used to describe faith in something as absolute truth and to believe it as truth with absolutely no doubt. So when we, like I said, the difference between them is that Iman is the initial stage. It's the initial belief that, yes, I believe in the teachings of Islam, I believe in Allah, I believe in His Rasul. But when that becomes an absolute complete way of life, that becomes matured, that becomes completely like a knot, like I said, tied like a knot, that is Aqidah. So why is this important? Why should we learn about this? Why does it have a role in our lives? So the study of Aqidah is called Ilmul AQAAID, and it plays a massive role in the studies of Islam and theology and Islamic studies. And without it, we would not be able to reach that heartfelt state of our Iman, of our deen. And a really good example of this is the hadith related by Harith bin Malik al-Ansari, radiallahu anhu. According to him, he was passing by Allah's Rasul ﷺ, and he ﷺ said to him, "How do you feel this morning, O Harith?" He replied, "I felt like a true believer. I enjoyed the true reality of faith this morning." So he said, "Consider what you say, because everything has a reality. So what is the reality of your faith?" He, radiallahu anhu, submitted, "Ya Rasulullah, myself has become averse and disinclined to anything from this world. So I spend my nights awake because of that and pass my days thirsty of looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I am in such a state as if I am watching the throne of my Lord right before me. I have turned myself away from this world completely." And then the Prophet ﷺ said, "O Harith, you have truly understood the reality of faith, so cling to it." So when you focus on your Iman, try to reach that stage of tying a knot, reaching that true resolve. And inshallah, we can also have the same enlightenment as the awliya Allah. It's not far from us. If we truly commit to it, then inshallah, it will change the way you approach even your practical Islam. So if you are just doing your prayers, your fasts, you're paying your zakat, it's not the same when you have your proper iman, when you have that belief, it's strong inside you, that all those practical acts become so much more enjoyable, so much more meaningful, and so much more, they bring so much more blessings in your practical life as well. So this is why we should be studying all our beliefs. We should know what our traditions, our scholars, our ancestors before us throughout Islam have believed, what their true teachings of Islam were, so that we can also reach that state of spiritual excellence or ihsan, like we mentioned before. So inshallah, I hope this course will be a sort of stepping stone or just a starter to start us on this journey, inshallah. So, like I said in the beginning, in this whole course, we will be going through all of the articles of faith, which I'm sure we've all learned when we were younger, in Iman al-Mufassal and Iman Mujmal, that آمنت بالله وملائكته ورسله وكتبه واليوم الآخر وقدره وشره من الله الموت. So when we split them up into 7, or sometimes it's 6, it just depends on how you split them up, of the articles of faith. So this is essential when you have that initial stage of Iman. These are essential to believe in. And we will be going into depth of all of them, inshallah, over the 5 weeks. So first we have faith in Allah, which is Iman Billah. Then faith in angels, Iman Bil Malaika. Faith in the heavenly books. So that's all of the revelations revealed to the prophets throughout history. Iman bil Kutub. Number 4 is Iman bil Rusul, faith in the messengers, so all the Anbiya, all the Rusul. And then number 5 is Iman bil Yawm al Qadr, which is faith in the last day, the day of judgment, and Iman bil Qadr, which is faith in destiny, which means that we believe that everything that happens is decreed by Allah, both good and evil. And finally, we have Iman bil Akhirah, faith in the life after death, so paradise and hell and our life after this world. So we will be going over all of these in the next 5 weeks, inshallah. So when we talk about the first one, which is Iman Billah, faith in Allah, what does it exactly mean? What does it entail? What should we be believing in? So, Iman Billah itself means to declare Allah being one. So the unique, Al-Ahad, the creator, Al-Khaliq, the owner, Al-Malik, the cherisher, the provider, Al-Razik, and the sustainer. And when we believe all of these qualities of all the divine attributes of Allah with our tongue, combined with its testimony deep in our heart, we will inshallah achieve Iman Billah. But there are requirements, there is understandings, there is certain things that we must know for Iman Billah. Firstly, the distinctions and the attributes. What are the divine attributes of Allah? What are exclusive to Him? Are there some attributes that can be present in the creation of Allah? And what attributes should we not be associating with anyone else, so as to prevent ourselves from entering the boundaries of shirk? So when we think about just the general attributes of Allah, there are many, countless. I'm sure we've all heard of the 99 names of Allah, but there are all of the praiseworthy qualities, of course, all of them, they're countless. So I'm going to just mention a few and how they have been stated in the Quran. So we have in Surah 20, verse 110, يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِهِ عِلْمًا. So this ayah denotes the all-knowing quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It means that He who knows all things which are ahead of them and which are behind them, and they cannot encompass His knowledge with their knowledge. So this ayah denotes that He is Alim, Al-Alim. And in another ayah in the Quran, Surah 42, verse 11, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وهو السميع البصير. There's nothing like him, and he alone is all hearing, all seeing. So the qualities of Sami' and Basir uh, are also for Allah. And we have in Surah 6, verse 103, لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار وهو اللطيف الخبير. No vision can grasp his sight. He has encompassed all vision and sight. He is the all-viewer, all-aware. So the qualities of Latif and Khabir, again for Allah as mentioned in the Quran. And these are just some examples in the Quran, but we know that He is the first of all, meaning Al-Ahad, Al-Awwal, meaning that He has no beginning, and Al-Akhir, He is also the last, meaning that He has no end, and He is the evident and the concealed, and everything other than His divine self has been created by Him. So He is Al-Khaliq. He is the one who destroys every being and takes the life from every being and will raise everybody from the dead on the day of judgment. So He gives life and takes life. And like in Surah Ikhlas, we always read that He doesn't need anybody or anything, whereas everybody else, all His creation needs Him and needs His favor. He's not confined to a body or a body-like thing and is free of all the qualities that a body can have, such as eating, drinking, or sleeping. And He holds control over every being and executes what He pleases. And only He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can give life and cause death, like I mentioned. Only He gives illness and gives health, al-shafi. Only He can give honor and dignity or bring disgrace and humiliation. Only He can inflict harm or give benefit or give sustenance or provide for His creation. So everything that we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must believe that He is Al-Khaliq, He is Al-Raziq. Everything we have, good and bad, is from Him. And no action that He executes is without wisdom. He is the owner and custodian of all and the King of the kings, and only He deserves worship. These are just some general attributes that we know and we've all heard of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we must believe in these. But when we think about these attributes, is it okay if we attribute some of these to His creation? Where do we draw the line between God and creation, and where is Tawheed and Shirk when we talk about attributes? So there are some attributes that we can use for the creation, but we must differentiate between them. Allah's qualities are all inherent, they are zati. But all qualities, for example, we can hear. Allah has given us His creation, the power to see, the power to hear, the power to feel, the power to know, but they are all given, they are all ata'i. There is a clear distinction that we must make, that when we know that any of the prophets, any of the creation, that we have the ability to see and hear, it is nowhere in the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has it, because our qualities have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even the Anbiya and Awliya that have the knowledge of the unseen, that as well is a given quality. It is ata'i. And that knowledge has been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has ilmul ghaib, knowledge of the unseen, but that is within Himself, it is inherent. Whereas the Anbiya and Awliya that have that, they have been given that as ata'i. We must make that distinction clear, that way we can refrain from any sort of shirk. So for example, in the Quran, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Innahu huwa as-sami'ul basir. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all hearing and all seeing. But He also says in Surah Mulk, فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. So we have made Him, referring to humanity and creation, we have made Him in the order of hearing and then seeing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself says that He has given us the ability to hear and see. So that is the same quality, but there is a clear distinction. Again, He has given us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inherently all hearing and all seeing. So another example is Inna Allah bin nasi ra'ufur rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is surely most kind, ever merciful to mankind. And in another place in the Quran, He says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Surely a glorious messenger from amongst yourselves has come to you, your suffering and distress grievously heavy on him. He is ardently desirous of your betterment, and he is most merciful uh, to the believers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself as merciful inherently, and he also describes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as wanting to be merciful and kind to the believers. But again, that is a given quality because Allah has created Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but his quality, Allah's his own of being Ar-Rahim, is inherent. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in shaheed. Surely Allah is witnessing everything, so He is a witness, a shaheed. But for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, He also says, يَكُونَ الرَّسُولَ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا, and our messenger bears witness to you. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also has the ability to bear witness. So the quality of shaheed is being used for Allah Himself and Rasulullah, but again, like I said, it is inherent in given quality. And for example, for Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam. But Musa alayhi salam also spoke to Allah directly. So they both, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described himself as having the speaking to the Prophet Musa. But again, that ability is within himself inherent, and Prophet Musa alayhi salam was given that honor, given that quality, given that attribute to be able to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many, many more examples in the Quran. Even when we talk about Jinnah, there's one example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says for himself, أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the master of all the forces. But in Ruwaya, one of the companions of Sulaiman alayhi salam, Prophet Sulaiman, one mighty jinn came to him and said, I can bring it to you before you rise from your seat, and I am indeed energetic enough and trustworthy to bring it to you. So this jinn had the power to bring things in a way that humans regularly do not, and had extra power and might. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word quwwat for himself, and in this jinn himself uses the word quwwat as well. So the quality of power is being used, but again, given and inherent. We must make that distinction to make sure our iman billah is clear and resolute. So these are just some examples of the attributes so that we have a clear understanding of what divine attributes are and what given attributes are. So yes, like I said, inherent attributes are called zati sifat, and they are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and given are ada'i sifat. Sifat means attributes or adjectives, which is for creation. So ada'i are for all that has been created. So inherent and zati attributes are only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not even Rasulullah sallam, only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else, any other quality that any creation has or have all been given. We must make that distinction clear to ourselves. So what are some attributes that are completely specific to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are, of course, countless attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that are specific to Him, but some examples are that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is the true deity and only one worthy of worship. We don't have any right at all to associate any being with Him in the matter of worship. Only He is worthy of worship, which we say in our Shahada, La ilaha illallah, that there's no God but Allah, and we countless mentioned in countless places in the Quran. This is an inherent and specific attribute to Allah, divine attribute. This cannot be given to anyone else. And He is also Alimul Ghaib, the knower of all the unseen. So for a Nabi to have Ilmul Ghaib, or a Waliullah to have Ilmul Ghaib, it has been given, and they have only a part of Ilmul Ghaib. But when we say Alimul Ghaib, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the knower of completely every single thing in this universe of all the unseen, that quality cannot be given to anyone else. Alimul Ghaib. And it's important that we confine the attribute of authority specific to Allah Almighty, to Him alone. For example, being the creator, Al-Khaliq, omnipotent, self-reliant and internal, and not need of any other. Those specific attributes are all divine attributes. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the authority to accept invocations and supplications. So dua is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So direct dua, we do dua with the intermediation, with the wassul. That is different. We're asking through the blessing of someone. That is not asking that person directly. And even if someone asks, for example, and we say, Ya Rasulullah, we ask for things, that is with the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving those blessings or whatever that is through the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah is the one accepting that request. So of course we can ask in person to someone for help. That does not mean we are denying this attribute. It just means that that person is a means of delivering that request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that can be that can accept supplications and dua. And there are also certain actions that are specific to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is self-sufficient in these matters, and these actions belong to none other. For example, creating the whole universe out of nothing and bringing it to an end, giving life and death, that is specific to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being worthy of worship, again, specific. Establishing paradise and hell, that cannot be attributed to anyone else. Creating angels, assigning prophets and messengers, trusting the prophets and messengers with revelations, giving the revelation to the prophets and messengers, changing day and night, keeping boats and ships safely afloat in the deep oceans, sending winds, controlling the weather. All these specific things that can only be attributed to the creator of the universe are all divine attributes. And if we attribute any of these to anything else, it will be denial of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes, which will remove us from Iman. And there are also some certain beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that cannot be given to any other than Him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, certain ones are, for example, Ar-Rahim. So we of course know some people that have the name Rahim, but certain names like this should not be given. They should instead be replaced with Abdul Rahim, for example, or Abdul Rahman, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is those names are specific to Allah. Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahman. Although humanity can be merciful, but the specific name, that should be reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah alone must be invoked by the names that are attributed to Him, like I said, and calling upon others beside Him by those names is impermissible because it would be against the Sharia. And of course, there are many, many more examples, and you can read these in several books that have been written by Shaykh al-Islam. And so this is just a general overview of Allah's attributes, but there are several books that have been written, several ayahs in the Quran, several ahadith about Allah's sifat, and that we could go on for hours and hours if we went into depth for that. But now we will go into a deeper discussion about the requirements and the types of Iman Billah. What is an actual practical breakdown of what Iman Billah should be in our lives. So there are three main types that have been mentioned in this book, AQAAID Iman by Shaykh al-Islam. In his other book, Hidayah al-Ummah, there have been 5 mentioned, but they're generally, it's the same meanings. The subtypes have been mentioned as main types in the Hidayah al-Ummah. So in AQAAID Iman, the 3 requirements that have been explained of Iman Billah are love of Allah, which is Muhabbat Ilahi. Number 2 is obedience of Allah, so Da'at Ilahi. And number 3, trust in Allah, Tawakkul ala Allah. And in Al-Hidayah al-Ummah, the extra conditions that have been mentioned are dhikr ilahi and khashyat ilahi, which is remembrance of Allah and fear of Allah. But these can also be categorized within these 3 types that are mentioned here. If anyone would like more information on these types, you can refer to Hidayat al-Ummah by Shaykh al-Islam, Dr. Muhammad al-Qadi. So the first type and requirement of Iman Billah is muhabbat ilahi. And when we think about love, if we have a link or a relation with someone or something, or some sort of just connection, a spiritual link in our heart is born, which is known as love. So when we have that love for something, it is much more easier to follow that thing or that person. And all love in this dunya and of any creation is finite, because creation is finite. We are mortal, we will end one day. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is immortal. He has no beginning and no end. So his love is also everlasting. And it is the only love that we can have 100% trust in, and trust that it is completely good for us. So muhabbati illahi is one of the most essential parts of Iman Billah, and it allows for the other requirements of Iman Billah to be fulfilled in a much more easier manner, and is essential actually for the fulfillment of obedience of Allah and trust in Allah. Without love, we cannot do those completely and properly. So the conditions of Muhabbat Ilahi itself are: number 1, kathrat dhikr, which is abundance in dhikr. So when we remember Allah more, the more you remember your beloved, the more your love will increase. The more link that you have, the more your love will increase. It has no limit. The more we remember, it's just going to multiply. And all the obedience of Allah will, inshallah, become much more easier, and will actually become incumbent in our lives. Second condition of Muhabbat Ilahi is sabr, patience when there is a hardship, because it is a test from Allah. And if you have that sabr, inshallah, that love will increase. If you have that intention that this difficulty has been given to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He loves me, because He wants to test me. As we all know, Allah tests those who He loves. So think of every hardship that you have as an opportunity to increase your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third thing is disconnecting yourself from all other than your beloved. So this does not mean that you completely abandon yourself from the world and your responsibilities and your practical life in the dunya. It means that any attraction or love that you have for this material world should be removed from your heart, whilst also fulfilling your responsibilities, because fulfilling your religious responsibilities, fulfilling your practical responsibilities is also a commandment of Sharia, a commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And fulfilling the commandments of Allah is an act of love. So when we abandon all those, we're actually in fact denying the responsibilities that Allah has given us. So to truly embody that love, we would follow His commandments, follow the responsibilities He has given us, fulfill them, but also remove that love from our heart. So in a way that if everything that we have, we were to lose, the love of Allah would be the only thing in our heart, and we would not feel that loss because we would have no attachment to this dunya. So that's what it means when it says that you should disconnect yourself from all that is other than your beloved. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. And the people who believe love Allah extremely, ashaddu, this is extremely emphasized here. So a sign of your iman billah, just your general iman, is an extreme love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So according to this ayah, it is essential to our iman to love Allah, to have a connection to Allah, to obey Him, to have that true unconditional love for Him. So if we were to follow the commandment of Allah and follow this ayah, then Allah's love should therefore be the strongest, most present thing in our lives. More than anything we love, more than our families, more than any your children, parents, anything in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be the most beloved to you in your life if you want to be a true mu'min. There is very, very extended discussions on love of Allah throughout history, and the awliya and ashab ikram, different encounters, different stories, and it could be a very, very long discussion, but there is a book by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Ilahi. If you would like to get more information on this topic and get more enlightenment and knowledge, then I would recommend you to check that book, inshallah. So the second condition that we have, or requirement of Iman Billah, like I've mentioned before, is ita'at ilahi, which is obedience of Allah. And when you love someone, it is natural for us, it's automatic for us to actually follow that person, follow them, mimic them, follow everything that they say. It's natural. That's how love works. For example, if you are working and you have a boss, of course we don't all like our colleagues and people that are in authority, but we still do what they tell us, and it's much more difficult for us to do something told by someone that we don't love. And if we don't have that love in our lives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the actions, all the commandments of Allah become much more difficult to follow. They become a burden in our lives. We think of salah as a burden. We think of any sort of religious or activity, any ritual, any of the, like I said, the Islam is the practical pillar of the deen. Any pillar of Islam we have to perform, it becomes a burden if you do not have that love. But if you have love in your heart of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obedience comes naturally. So if we do all the things like I mentioned before, dhikr of Allah, patience in difficulties, removing all loves of the worldly things, then obedience will come naturally to us. It goes hand in hand. And naturally, love demands that the obedience of the beloved. It's just how love works. But this love, like I said before, does not mean that you abandon all your responsibilities and practical life, because fulfilling your responsibilities is obeying Allah's command, and obeying the command of your beloved is also an act of love. So we should in fact think of our acts of worship as I am listening to my beloved. So not only will your act of worship be an act of worship and give you thawab, but it will also be an act of love. Your life will be much more enjoyable if everything that you do is an act of love. You will have much more content heart, and you will have that spiritual excellence inside yourself, inshallah. So our last condition, a requirement, is tawakkul on Allah. So trust in Allah. This means to trust Allah in every single matter of our life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yunus says, وَقَالَ مُوسَى يَا قَوْمِ إِن كُنتُمْ آمَنْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُمْ مُسْلِمِينَ. And Musa said to his nation, if you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then put all of your trust into him. So it was Prophet Musa's command to his nation to put all of their trust into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they did not trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there were many calamities that befell Bani Israel because of their lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we must remember again that our responsibilities must not be abandoned in the name of this trust, because that again goes against the nature of tawakkul Allah. There is quite a famous waqi'ah in the hadith that there was once a sahabi who the Prophet ﷺ met, and he asked him, "Oh, where did you leave your camel?" And the Sahabi he said that I left it to the trust of Allah, meaning that he just left it where he did, and he did not tie it, he didn't bind it to anything so that it wouldn't run away. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "أعقلها وتوكل." So first tie it and then trust in Allah. So this means that we need to fulfill our responsibilities, complete what we have been commanded, and then have trust in Allah. Because if we just have trust in Allah per se, and do not fulfill any of our responsibilities and don't do anything that we have been created to do, then the whole concept of jihad, of struggle, of fighting for our deen, fighting for justice, all of that goes away because we trust in Allah. If Allah wills, it will happen. No, that's not how that works. We must first fulfill our responsibilities, try our hardest, do whatever we can, and then put our trust in Allah. Because in the end, the outcome will be what Allah wants. But we should still try our best. So there is two extreme sides to this argument, to this tawakkul on Allah. There's people who would put all of their trust in this dunya. So the sort of approach of cause and effect. Whatever you do, that's the result that you will get. That's the modern scientific Western approach to how we live. So what you do, that's the result you're going to get. But that's not the Islamic approach. We should know that whatever we do, the outcome is all from Allah. It's not from ourselves. Whatever the outcome is, it will be what has been decreed to us from Allah. So that's one extreme, to completely rely on this dunya and what we see, just completely apparent. No, the dunya, everything that happens is from Allah. And when we have that trust, it's much easier to accept difficult situations, much easier to accept hard situations, and it's easier to have that sabr. And then there's the other extreme of where people think that, oh, we don't need to do anything. We should just seclude ourselves and worship Allah, and so-called just worship and isolate ourselves, and everything else we will put our trust in Allah. No, again, like I said, you're fulfilling your responsibilities is your obedience of Allah, which is again an act of love. And defying or denying those responsibilities is in fact denying the commandments of Allah, denying the responsibilities given to you. And that is, again, a violation of the trust in Allah because you're violating His commandment. So we should find that middle ground in which we do whatever we can. We struggle, we do our best, we try to fulfill our responsibilities, we fight for the deen, we fight for the oppressed, we fight for justice, but we leave the outcome and result to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the true way that we can fulfill tawakkul ala Allah. So these were just the general types and requirements of Iman Billah, and there can be a detailed discussion of every single type. In fact, Shaykh al-Islam has written a book on Muhabbat-e Ilahi and Ita'at-e Ilahi and Tawakkul. There is a book on every single one, so there is a detailed discussion available, and if you would like to get more information, then I would recommend checking these books. And the discussion is also available in Hidayah al-Ummah and Arkan-e-Iman by Shaykh al-Islam as well. So just an overview and a summary of what we've discussed today is that our deen has three main pillars, and each single pillar, Islam, Iman and Ihsan, is not complete without each other. And each other pillar is a manifestation of the other. So our Iman is practically manifested in the way of our Islam, our practical rituals. And our Ihsan is the refinement, you can say, of our Islam and Iman, the spiritual excellence, the next level, and that Ihsan falls into the study of the Tasawwuf. So the essential first stage to reach that spiritual excellence is ensuring that our Iman is truly like an aqd, like a tied knot. So we have the aqidah. So the Iman becomes an aqidah. It becomes a proper belief system that is truly resolved in your heart. And we have, of course, the initial 7 articles of faith, which is just the initial stage of our belief as a Muslim. And when we go into each of those different articles and we study them and we understand them and that becomes resolved in our heart, we can inshallah have the aqidah. So we discussed today the Iman Billah, which is true belief in Allah, that everything. Allah is creator, cherisher, sustainer, provider. All of that we believe, we say by our tongue, and we confirm in our heart that all of the divine attributes, all of the attributes of Allah, we believe them in our heart, and we say them by tongue. That is Iman Billah. And the main requirements of Iman Billah entail, firstly, love of Allah, Muhabbat Ilahi, which we can practically manifest in our lives by remembering Allah as much as we can of God, and trying to make every single act in our life a worship by having the intention of pleasing Allah. And if we have that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obedience comes naturally. Obeying the commandments, fulfilling the responsibilities, fulfilling our rituals, all our salah, fast, fulfilling the responsibilities of the people around us, our neighbors, our families, our relatives. All of these can become an act of love for Allah. For us, it might be a natural day-to-day thing and you don't think much about it. But if you think, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told me to be kind to my relatives, to be kind to my neighbors, and if I do this, it will make Allah happy. That is an act of love and an act of worship, both. So you will be fulfilling both requirements, muhabbat ilahi and ita'at ilahi. And after that, what we can do is have trust in Allah. No matter what you do, the outcome is from Allah. So we should try our best. We should struggle. We should have that jihad. But the result and outcome is from Allah, and you can only trust. So, like Rasulullah said, we should tie our camel and we should then trust Allah. So we should try our best and then have that trust. So when it comes to Minhaj al-Quran International itself and how it helps us to establish this role of connecting ourselves with Allah, the foundation of Minhaj al-Quran has initially it had 5 articles which were called Anasiri Khamsa, and the first one, which was Ta'alluq billah, connecting yourself with Allah, your connection with Allah. So the most initial and first stage of Minhaj al-Quran was Ta'alluq billah. So we as members and followers of Minhaj al-Quran should make sure that we have that connection with Allah, because that's the foundation of our organization. We should keep the Ta'alluq billah at the forefront of our minds. And of course, the other stages come as well, and they come with that, and they're all different manifestations. So Ta'alluq bil Rasul, Ta'alluq bil Quran, they're all different forms of Ta'alluq billah. They're all connected at the end to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the forefront of our mind should always be, we should connect ourselves to Allah, love Allah, because not only is it essential to our iman, it is also part of Minhaj al-Quran and it's the teachings of Shaykh al-Islam. And there is countless literature, lectures available, and we have continuous mahafil dhikr available to keep us connected. And these are all generally collective ways that we can connect ourselves to Allah. And the personal ways that we have is, like I've mentioned, keeping that remembrance of Allah always in your daily life. How doing ifkar throughout your day, doing ifkar after salah, sitting down, and even just doing supplication and dua after you finish your salah can have a really big difference on your heart. We always just finish our salah and try to get it out the way and leave to do something else. But if you even sit down for 5 minutes after your salah to remember the blessings, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings you have. Try and ask for anything that you need. Asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that He loves, for He loves for His creation to do dua to Him. If you just sit down and have true heartfelt dua, even if your dua is for Allah to put more love in your heart for Him, that is one of the most beautiful dua that you can do. If you sit down and give those 5 minutes for 5 salah a day, that means that your day has been split into 5, and each stage has been oriented around the remembrance of Allah. And inshallah, that blessing from that dua will carry on to the next salah. And that will help, inshallah, Allah forgive even all the minor sins between your salah. So that's just one little way that you can try and implement that in your practical daily life. And then your collective ways, like I mentioned, reading the literature of Hazrat Sayyid Shaykh al-Islam and understanding why it is so important to have this love, to obey Allah, and to listen to his lectures. Even listening to a lecture of Shaykh al-Islam a day can change the way you think. And if you think about, if you listen to, as you said, the Sheikh Islam's lecture, you feel like a changed person after listening to one lecture. So imagine if you listen to that one day, every single day, you do your dua, that will have definitely a complete difference, sorry, a major difference in your life, in how you have that love in your heart and how content you feel as well. That contentment that we need in our lives, we always lack it. We can always achieve that by having that love of Allah. I know that most people, when they're having to, when they're praying for Allah, having fasting and doing all these things, they feel sort of disconnected and they feel like they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But it's just that one intention. If you know that, okay, I'm struggling to keep my focus in Salah, but if you sit down for that dua afterwards, inshallah, the next Salah will be much easier to focus on, because you will have that blessing in your life then. And listening to those lectures, again, will help you increase that focus and help you understand why it is that you're praying, why it is that you're worshipping, why it is that you must look after your family as your Islamic responsibility. All those things, your perspective will change, and inshallah, the blessings will also increase in your life. So keep connected to Minhaj al-Quran to continue building and strengthening your ta'alluq with Allah, your connection with Allah. And inshallah, next week we will be talking about your connection with Rasulullah and the messengers and Risala, how we can develop our connection to Prophet in order to, in the end of the day, even our connection to Prophet Muhammad is a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So next week, inshallah, we will also be discussing ta'alluq with our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah. And thank you for listening for today. I hope you enjoyed or understood just the tiniest bit of information I can give. Anything wrong I said is from myself, and anything right that I said is from my Sheikh, Sheikh al-Islam. And I hope to see you all next week, inshallah. And I hope that we can all implement this ta'alluq and muhabbat and ita'at of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives, inshallah. Jazakallah.